Welcome to Oops, Orgasm Oracle podcast show, where we talk everything pleasure, sex, and intersectionality. I'm Nadia. My pronouns are she, they. I'm queer in every sense, a slut, witch, and priestess. I'm an orgasm empowerment coach that's here to change your life by expanding your view on pleasure and guide you to how orgasm can be for healing and enlightenment. I recognize my privilege in my white body, and intersectionality is integral to my work. You can only heal yourself so far if you're not working to uplift the marginalized collective. Knowing this, I also fuck up, and I'm here for the compassionate, hard conversations. This podcast is to ignite expansion through education, exploration, sharing personal experiences, and radical, often shocking honesty. Many of the topics discussed are intense, and it's normal to feel triggered or have personal trauma surface. I'm always here to reach out to if this is the case, or please seek out a qualified trauma therapist. I hope you enjoy this podcast, and most of all, I hope you learn something that you can take practically into your life or feel more validated in your personal experience. And please, please share, because every woman and vulva-bodied being deserves to have pleasure in their life and reclaim it. Because if you can't fuck yourself, how the hell are you gonna fuck somebody else? Let's get to the episode. Hi,
Hey.
hello. I'm here with MiaMiranda today, and we're talking about sex workers are saving the world. This is super near and dear to my heart, this topic. We're going to talk a bit about activism and orgasm, how sex workers are the intersection of intersectionality, and how sex positivity is changing the world. And I've got one of my best friends here. She's a light in my life, and her name's MiaMiranda. And I'm going to let her introduce herself. So, what makes you you? What are your pronouns? Let's hear it.
Hey, hi. So excited to be here. My name is MiaMiranda. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a queer Canadian sex worker with a big mouth. I like to say that because I love discussing controversial topics and I'm really not afraid to speak my truth and lovingly calling people out too when I'm noticing any discrepancies in people's like intersectionality awareness or just, yeah, I guess you could call me woke. I've been a stripper for over 6 years, and I've more recently started online sex work through OnlyFans. And that's kind of my focus right now. But it is my mission in this lifetime to change the stigma of sex work and also to help sex workers navigate this extremely complex job. I'm also a singer, and I'm working on my first album right now that's dedicated to celebrating womanhood. And my first song, Pussy, is currently available on any streaming platform. So, yeah, that's me.
Yes, listen to Pussy. It's amazing. And yeah, and also you're BIPOC as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm half English, half Indian. I very much identify with my Indian side, even though I'm very white passing. But I think that has really given me just like such a better understanding of like racism and like homophobia and like sexism and misogyny, patriarchy, like all these different things. It's really interesting to take it from the lens of a BIPOC. And even though I'm very white passing and I've very much experienced so much white privilege in my life, it's just very near and dear to my heart that, yeah, people are aware of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that. So like maybe let's talk about privilege a bit then. Let's start with that. And
Yeah.
I know sex work. So I'm an ex-sex worker. Now I'm a sex coach. But yeah, like I came from a very privileged place in my sex
Mhm.
work. Like I was sugar babying and I had mostly good experiences. I mean, I had a couple like dodgy or bad ones, but I was very privileged in a sense to be able to have safety for the most part and be able to use like my white body to my advantage and these kinds of things. But the sex worker world is so diverse. Hey, like You see all types from on the street to high paying escorts and all kinds of things, right?
Definitely. I think that's one thing people don't really realize about sex work is that it is such a broad industry. And I think people really see either like the extremely wealthy stripper escorts and then the like street level survival sex work. And they kind of just see those two things, but there's a huge range in between that. I'm extremely privileged. I am very like the typical, standard of beauty. I'm white passing. I have like a desired body type. I also have like internet access. I have the ability to, like, I already had wealth already. So I was able to invest in my costumes and I can, travel and things like that for work. So I have a lot of opportunities already available to me that someone doing what they call survival sex work, where you're not like that involves street level sex work, but survival sex work is kind of like you don't have as many privileges starting out. You maybe don't have enough money to invest in costumes. You don't have internet access to access online sex work or even like online platforms that people use to find more like higher paying sex work opportunities. So yeah, there's definitely a huge level of privilege that is involved in the spectrum of sex work. And I really think, I guess more people need to acknowledge that. Like, I consider myself probably on the higher end. I do make quite a bit of money as a dancer. But I know that's not the norm for everybody. I also have had the privilege to go to business school. So I have like sales training, I have customer service training. Like that has helped a lot. And it's not something that everybody has access to, but just for me, I think it's something that I would love to help share with other sex workers because I think that that really can help increase your income and help you afford new opportunities, having like a place to live, having internet access, a phone with a camera, things like that can really, really help your experience and help, go from like survival sex work to just sex work where you're making an income and you have a place to live and things like that. Yeah, I think it's so important to really address that there's a huge spectrum of it. It's not just one or the other.
Totally. It's so important to see the difference in that. And I mean, like, I was even having a conversation with someone the other day and talking about strippers and they like scoffed. And it's just like, okay, there's so much stigma around sex work when like sex work is such an integral part of society. And it
Mhm.
actually makes me so angry. I was actually just watching a TV show and there was a disabled person in it and they were kind of talking about their side of things and how like able-bodied people, right, like they don't understand, like a lot of them are engaging in sex work from their perspective, but like a lot of people, like this is their healthcare, literally, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you never had access to sex. And what
Yeah.
is sex? Sex is our most primal, most important, it's our vitality. It's like how we have oomph in the world and like desire to live and have pleasure. And the fact that we shame, oh, I'm gonna get so enraged. I want to
Yeah.
scream.
I know it
The
makes me
fact
so
that we
mad.
shame it just makes me so angry because there's such a spectrum of empowerment and disempowerment, like any job, right? Like any job. Yeah.
I know I really kind of I've recently learned too in the last year or so to really refrain from just like defaulting to say sex working is such an empowering job because it can be or it cannot be. Like there are moments where I feel extremely empowered. There are moments when I don't. There are people who always feel empowered. There are people who maybe never feel empowered. And I think just to like boil it down to say it's only a valid job because you're so empowered, that kind of takes away from all of the hard work that we really do put into it and the times when we're not empowered but we still do the job because it's our job and we've we're already in the job. Just because you have one bad experience it doesn't mean like, oh my god, I have to throw it away and never do it again. I mean, for some people if it's a bad enough experience I'm sure that happens, but I've had many bad experiences in the beginning, more, not really anything recently, but all those experiences have only just made me realize like, oh, this is a lesson I have to learn going forward and how to better conduct myself, have better boundaries, things like that. Yeah, because there's some times where I'm like, oh, I hated that experience for sure. That was not empowering, but this is my job. And I've had even when you're working in retail, I find it's so interesting because people really can treat you like absolute garbage. Like I used to working at McDonald's was my very first job. And I've had people like yelling at me because we put ketchup on their hamburger or something like that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like there's experiences like that. And then you go into sex work as a stripper, like, oh my God, literally, Kate, the other day on Saturday night. So I'm on stage, it's the last show of the night. I'm the last dancer going on, and I had done a shower show. So I was like wiping up the stage afterwards. And this guy put his shot glass on the stage. And I was just like, oh, I hate when people do that because it's so annoying and it's very dangerous too. Like, you don't want to have anything on the stage. So I just said, hey, it's in a shelf, just move your drink. Moves his drink. I turn around, turn back. He puts it back up on the stage. I was like, oh my God, this guy is messing with me now. And I just go over and I was like, hey, like, move your drink. This isn't okay. Puts it down, turn around, he puts it up again. And so this time I was just like mad. So I just went over and I just kicked the, I just kicked the drink like right off of the stage. I just like booted it off. And they were kind of like, oh, why'd you do that? Blah, blah. I'm like, because I'm mad and you're disrespecting me. And then I turn around, keep cleaning, turn back around. They had put 3 shot glasses in the middle of the stage. And so I just like, use my arm, I just wiped them all away and I just kept doing my thing. Picked up, my hundreds of dollars from my show and walked up the ladder to the change room. So like, it's a very nuanced job, honestly. Like you have moments where you're like mad, but then the positive thing I think about sex work that people don't realize is that we now have the autonomy to like walk away or call out a bad situation or a disrespectful situation. Like when I was at McDonald's and that person's yelling at me about the ketchup, like I can't be like, hey, you're being an asshole, you have to calm down. I just kind of have to take it. But now I feel like I have the empowerment just in myself to be like, this isn't okay. And we also have the freedom to tell someone like, that's not okay. Like I'm allowed to swear at a customer or say something, call out for being rude, which is something that you're not really afforded in like a regular kind of job. So yeah, there's like ups and downs of it, definitely. But yeah, I don't really like to use the word empowerment as like a default anymore, just because it's such a complex job. Like there really isn't one like stereotypical sex worker. I'm sure everyone has it in the media, but like in my experience, every single person I met is so different. They're also unique. They all have different makeups of the way they make their income, their like socioeconomic status, their like just everything, their sexuality, like every single person is so unique and individual. And like, I just love getting to share that with people, that it's such an amazingly diverse community for sure.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I even was working a waitressing job before and I was sexually assaulted at work and they like all turned against me and I went like to the police, tried to go through like the law system, I tried everything and there was complete shame. No, everyone was passing me off like and then sex work, like anywhere you work, you should be able to be safe. Like if I'm not safe at a waitressing job, like let alone, where you're actually engaging in sexuality, right? So this is where I really find sex work is like on the front lines of fighting for like rights and safety.
Yeah.
And who gets into sex work like really commonly, like a lot of foreigners and immigrants, right? Because they can't do other jobs, or all kinds of people come there for so many different reasons. And there's the need, obviously, like it's not like it's going anywhere, and so talking about how sex workers are really on the front lines of like changing this world in a positive way through intersectionality. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the title of this podcast is something I genuinely deeply believe, that sex workers are saving the world, and we are saving the world behind the scenes. That's not happening on the news or in the media or anything like that. It's happening in the private dance rooms, it's happening in hotel rooms, it's happening even on the stage sometimes through conversations or in the bar, wherever. Because we are just like, yes, we're providing a service and there's that customer experience side of it, but also like we're the ones who are helping people, answer those kind of tough questions sometimes that they'll have about sex work. We're the ones having the, I guess, confidence to like call someone out if we see misogynistic or racist behavior. Like I remember this group of guys came in the middle of the day they had just done a HR seminar about like, I can't remember if it was racism or something like that. And they were like discussing it with me, and I was really helping them understand it, because I think one of the guys was like, well, how come I'm in a strip club and I can say you're sexy, but when I'm at work I can't say that.
Mm,
I'm like, okay, well, this is why. And I'm like breaking it down for him, and he's like, oh, I actually really understand that. I feel like I don't want to say that like I want to add on to sex workers' jobs that like it is now your responsibility
mm,
to educate people, but it's just something we inherently do because we're aware of it, and we're
mm-hmm,
so, I guess, like sensitive to those kind of topics that it's like impossible to ignore. It's just like, I'm going to educate you because I know this information. And also I feel like people are just, I don't know, they really like take what we're saying to heart, because they can see like we're putting ourselves out there, we're being extremely vulnerable. We've also, have lots of time off to like educate ourselves and be a part of diverse communities. So I feel like people really like take what we're saying to heart when we're
mm,
having those like, intimate conversations. Maybe some guy who's like yelling at off the side of the bar, like that's not really the time and place. But I find that there are so many times, because you get to be really like intimate and vulnerable with these people,
mm-hmm,
and then it just like things start to come up. And also what I love too is talking about people's their own sexualities. Like, let's say I'm in a dance, for example, and I always ask the question like, what is your favorite part of a woman's body? Because then I'll usually try to like favor that part in the dance. And then people start talking about, like their kinks and like things that they're
mm-hmm,
into. And, oh, my girlfriend and I, we want to try this and that. And I'm usually the one who's like taking away the shame of whatever they're interested in. Like, oh, that's
mm-hmm,
amazing. Like, go for it. Or like making, talking about consent or things like that. There's so much stuff that comes up all the time. It's a very like vulnerable experience. And so people just spill their guts essentially. Like, we're always kind of there to, listen. We're kind of like therapists sometimes in a way. And I feel like these are the experiences that, let's say men, for example, are really not going and seeking out in other situations. Like, they're not going and getting therapy. They're not going and joining like, communities
mm-hmm,
around this kind of stuff. They're participating in sex work because that's their like desire, but then through that they are learning
mm-hmm,
all this education inadvertently just through conversation. And I think that is so important. The other part of the reason why I think sex workers are saving the world is because we are literally like energetic grounding, like, I don't know what the word is, but on like a top of the house they'll have those little things that like when lightning strikes,
mm.
if it strikes the house, like it'll strike that thing and then it kind of grounds the
Yeah,
energy.
lightning rod. Yeah,
Yeah, like a lightning rod. So I think sex workers are essentially like lightning rods. We take in
totally,
all this like
totally.
toxic energy, whatever people throw at us, we take it all in. And if you're, in the right state of mind, you're a lightning rod. You ground and diffuse that energy and you take it out of the world essentially, because there's so much like anger and kind of this like pent up rage that men have, and they come to the strip club and they just like get
Mm-hmm,
drunk and they let it all out. And
mm-hmm,
because we're getting paid for it, we're really good at just kind of like taking it and grounding it, and then that energy is not going out into the world. That anger, that masculine rage is not going out into a female in the workplace, for example. Like, it's coming to a place where it's a little bit more accepted. Not to say that like I enjoy being a lightning rod. It's like it's just
mm-hmm.
part of the job, but I do really I guess I take pride in the fact that I'm able to do that I'm able to take this energy and ground it and put it, deep into the earth, and not have it be running around rampant in the world, where for people who are not, consenting to take that energy on. So yeah.
Oh, fuck yes. Like snaps here. That was so
Thank
well put, so well said.
you.
And just like such an amazing analogy, because that's exactly what I felt when I was in sex work. Like I
Mhm.
was the place of safety. Like they couldn't go to their wives,
Yeah.
right? Because they're typically in a typical union in society where you have to fit in this certain box, and anything outside of that box is shamed, right? So they come to you as this safe place where they're, engaging in it financially and investing in that way. And, because you're being compensated for it, it's your job, like therapists take shit, all day, right? They hear crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's similar, right? And
Absolutely.
then it's a safe place, and then it's that vulnerability. Like that's exactly how I feel about sex. That's what my book is all about that I'm
Mhm.
writing. So the idea was that like I love sex, because that's the intimate, vulnerable place. Like, that's where you can really meet people. That's
Mhm.
where you can really touch and learn about culture and about like the vulnerability things that are going on in people's lives, like way below the surface.
Yeah.
Like we're not going an inch under surface, like we're in sex, right? And sex is that primal, it's the deepest part of ourselves. It's also where the deepest shit gets held, right?
Mhm.
So how much trauma is associated there, and as you listen to this podcast, you're going to kind of understand more and more about like how trauma is stored there and why the primal and sex like holds it all there.
Mhm.
But that's a huge healer, and people don't even know like why they're seeking it so hard, right? But they're obsessed, right? Society keeps telling you, oh, don't seek this is bad, pleasure is bad, but they like can't help themselves. That's why sex workers have a job,
Yeah.
right? And it's never going to go anywhere,
Totally.
because like we're not a sexually liberated society, right? So yeah, it was so well said. I'd love to go into a little bit more about like sex work and trauma as
Mhm.
well. And like, especially in your personal experience, I know we've worked together with some coaching. So I don't know if
Mhm.
you want to touch on that,
Totally.
but your personal experience is really incredible, how you can still engage sexually with clients, but your personal experience might be different. And I think
Mhm.
this is really important to talk about with sex workers.
Yeah. So something we like briefly just touched on before we got into this podcast was like the idea that sex workers are all extremely sexually liberated and just like having orgasms all day long kind of thing. I think is actually completely the opposite. When I got into sex work, I thought that I was very sexually liberated, but then as I started to, deepen my education and starting to learn about trauma and the nervous system and how experiences live in the body, I was like, oh my God, I am so fucking traumatized. Not necessarily from sex work, from previous experiences I had in my like high
Mhm.
school, growing up, bad partners, bad parenting, all that kind of stuff. And I think that all got like internalized and trapped. And I'm just a very like, I've always kind of been like a very sexually free, flirty person. And
Venus, Aries.
yeah, totally. Like Venus and Aries, I'm just like, I've always been that like on sexually. And even like the reason why I realized I could become a stripper is because when I would go to the clubs and I would just be dancing, everyone would just be staring at me. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, wow, I should like charge money for this. And so I've always had that, but I think that like my body always just wanted to be like moving in like sexual ways and things like that. And so I was like, oh, that means that I am like sexually liberated. But then when you like really get into it and you start to like ask certain questions, it comes through like, oh, actually, I'm not. I'm completely shut down and I'm living in like autopilot essentially. And I'm just kind of doing the motions and doing what I think is right. Um, and so it was so crazy because because of COVID, like I wasn't working for like 2 years or so. And during that time, I started working. Well, Nadia and I, we met in Vita, the sex, love, and relationship coaching program. And during that program, I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, I am holding on to so much pain, so much trauma from a previous extremely abusive relationship that I had when I was like 15 to 17, I'd say. Um, and I basically started to address that, not technically, not really voluntarily. It just started to come up once I started to realize what was going on. I just had like a complete, like, almost like a psychotic breakdown, honestly. Like, I remember that day in the shower and I had been very like kind of awkward. I was dating someone at the time. We were living together and I had just gone on a trip for my birthday in Hawaii, which was my first time, and it was so beautiful. And then when I came home, I had been so kind of opened up like spiritually when I was in Hawaii. And then when I came home, I was still very open. And then I was taking a shower. My partner kind of joined me in the shower. We started kissing, and then my entire body just shut down. It just completely shut down. I had so much pain in my vulva area. Like he hadn't even touched me, nothing like that. And I completely just broke down. Like I was like screaming and crying. I had no control over my body. I was like scratching my face off. I was like banging my head against the wall. Like it was absolutely nuts. And my partner was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Something happened in Hawaii. And I was like, no. And I could only get out like a couple words at the time, but I was just like, pain, pain. And he's like, what happened? And I'm like, it's old pain. I just said old pain, old pain. And he didn't really understand what was going on because obviously that's super vague and you have someone freaking out in front of you and you're like, what? So he was just really trying to like help me like calm down and just be holding space for me, which was honestly the best thing he could have done, because that was the first experience of me really like noticing, oh fuck, I've been raped like hundreds of times in my past relationship and I've never even like said that or dealt with that or whatever. So yeah, and I had been about 3 years into stripping at this time, and I was like making crazy money. I was able to go up on stage, I could be fully naked and just be like crazy, like whatever, it didn't matter. But then when I got home and tried to be intimate with my partner, it was like complete shutdown. And not even shutdown, but pain and like just it was just very, very like uncomfortable, very very painful, honestly. And it was so hard. I like even went to doctors and tried to figure out like, why am I in such pain? And they were really like, it's just trauma. Like it's really just like trauma trapped in your body, trapped in that area. So after that, my partner was extremely understanding, because it basically like I didn't have sex for the next like year almost. Like I didn't even masturbate. I could barely even touch myself without, like, I couldn't even really kiss him without pain coming up, because it was just there was just so much that I hadn't dealt with. So I was like, all right, time to deal with this shit. I started coaching with Nadia, which was like literally changed my life. It has been the most like helpful. I've been in like regular therapy for like 5 years, I would say now. And I'm, 5 years in, I'm still kind of like still having all these things. But then when we really went into my nervous system, we went into like the somatic work, oh my God, there was so much that came out. Like I don't even really remember those experiences. I'm sure you do because you were there in the space, but like I just remember shaking and crying and screaming and yelling and having so many emotional purges. But then coming out of that, it was like I was reborn, and I'm like, oh my God, I felt like almost like a baby at the time. Like I had this like baby sense of sexuality. I didn't even want to like, use sex toys or watch porn or anything like that. I would just kind of like roll around on the bed with myself and just like be very playful, kind of like how a toddler would be with their sexuality. And slowly like building myself back up. But I was kind of lucky that it happened during COVID, because I wasn't really working at all that time. And it would have been kind of hard to be like going through all this stuff, not being able to be with my partner, and then going and being on stage. I think I did do
there was a time where it crossed over for sure.
Yeah,
I remember
there definitely was times where I was doing stage. I don't think they were doing private dance at the time, and I think I was really lucky about that. I was just kind of going up and performing. And I'm a dancer, like in my blood. Like I grew up dancing, dance class and all that kind of stuff. So it was really easy to just kind of go into that autopilot and just dance. But there was so much underneath that was really like becoming unpacked. And so anyways, now I guess that's like what's been 6 months, I think, since our coaching kind of wrapped up, something like that.
So yeah, maybe
a bit of
bit
time.
Longer. I'm like,
yeah, maybe
what's
almost
the date? I don't even know.
yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I am so much more like in touch with my sexuality. I can go into a private dance and, allow myself to release the shame of like, oh, I'm actually kind of turned on by this in this moment. Excuse me. And before, I feel like I wasn't able to do that at all. I would just completely shut down and I would just go through the motions. But now I'm like, oh, I actually kind of enjoy this. Maybe not every single time. Sometimes it's just a job, but like once in a while, you're like, oh, I enjoy this. And before, it used to be so much shame that like, nope, you're not supposed to enjoy this. It's just a job. But it's like, no, like I'm allowed to enjoy my job. I'm allowed to be like turned on a little bit. That's totally fine. And also to be compensated for being turned on and experiencing pleasure is like, that just like opened up a whole new like sexual experience for me too. And now I'm able to be with partners. I experience no pain at all during sex. I feel so like actually sexually liberated. I'm able to recognize when I'm triggered or when my trauma kind of peaks back up sometimes. Like there was this one experience when I first started dancing, and I didn't realize that you're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to say, no, you can't do that. And there was this one guy that I went for a dance with, and I'm going to say his name because honestly, I hate him so much. And he has a name. But he's a construction worker and his name is Bob. So he called himself Bob the Builder. which is so stupid.
Cute.
But anyways, we went for this dance and he basically just like molested me the entire time. It was so uncomfortable. He was so grabby. He was like kissing me all over and all this disgusting stuff. And I didn't realize I could have just said, no, you can't do that. And he kept trying to like touch my pussy and stuff, which you're not allowed to do in a private dance. So I basically remember doing the whole dance with like my hand covering my pussy and just kind of like going through the motions. And that was just like one of the worst experiences I've ever had. And sometimes he will like come into the bar. I completely ignore him, but he'll walk in and like that memory will get triggered or that experience will get triggered. And I kind of feel myself shutting down. But if I'm on stage and he walks in, I'll just kind of like shake it off and just like put that shaking into my movement for a little bit, ignore him, and also spread to the other dancers, don't go for a dance with that guy, he's terrible. So like now I'm so much more aware of these things. I'm able to like call them out, address them, and then, you know, take steps to like rectify whatever's going on in myself and other people. And that's just honestly been like life-changing. Like it's incredible to be able to feel like you're in control of your nervous system, I guess I'll say. Not necessarily control, but you're like aware of it and you can acknowledge what's going on. Like it's life-changing for sure. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of sex workers really have that understanding, because a lot of us really, we're all quite like obviously like sexually like flirtatious kind of people. And so just because of living in like a patriarchal, misogynistic society, we've all experienced some sort of sexual assault, trauma, whatever it is. And we've usually just shut that down and continued on our job. So I see this kind of trauma and triggering happen in other dancers, but I don't see that same awareness because they haven't kind of necessarily done the work that I have. But I think it's just so important because they would be able to like, you know, conduct their business in such a more satisfying way when they're really aware of like, oh, just for an example, and it's not necessarily to do with sex work, but we had a dancer pass away in our community just a couple days ago, and it was extremely heavy. Came in on work on Saturday, and the girls who had known this girl really well were already completely wasted by like 3:00 p.m. And I was like, okay, like that's a trauma response, you know, that's you trying to numb your emotions and numb your feelings. And they basically just kind of stayed like wasted the whole weekend, which is their way of dealing with it. But like, you know, once Monday comes around, you realize, fuck, I didn't really make that much money this week. I was super wasted. I was just like, you know, doing whatever. And then you also have this hangover to deal with, which also increases the depression that you're probably feeling too. So it's like, it's just kind of a snowball effect when you're not really aware of these triggers and calling them out and addressing them right away. It can just make the job even harder. So yeah, it's something I really like try to bring up. You know, I see a girl in the change room, she's sitting there really quiet, and I'll just go and chat with her and just be like, hey, like, how are you feeling? If she starts crying, I'm like, I'm holding space for it. It's like, this is a hard job and we need to kind of be there for each other as much as possible, without being like, hey, I think you're traumatized. Like, let me like here's some information about that. Like, yeah, so here's
a pamphlet.
Here's a pamphlet. You should check this out. Yeah, I wish, honestly. I was gonna say you should get like a little flyer and I'll put it in the change room for you, because like
we've talked about it before. Definitely.
Yeah, like it's so important that we kind of go through this, and it's not the norm at all. Like I don't know any other girls who have kind of gone through that, but we've all been like traumatized, but not a lot of them are like dealing with it and stuff, and just makes our job so much harder. Like, yeah, so I really want to.
We have all been traumatized, right?
Exactly.
Like
we've all been.
Like that's the big thing that people don't realize too about sex is like, you don't have to be a sex worker to get traumatized with sex. Like you fucking don't. No. And one of the things I wanted to point out was when you were purging and doing the work with me, like you were not just referencing that partner that you got raped with hundreds of times. Like it was a lot of other things. It was like things from childhood and like things that you would never imagine has to do with what you think it, because trauma gets stuck in the nervous system, not in the instance, right? So it's like I don't even think me and you personally have talked about that partner of yours, but like in our coaching, I don't even think that came up specifically, not that I can remember, because so many other things did. And that's what like processes it and changes your nervous system. And then it's like,
it's like water so murky, like you open a tap and it's like all brown and gross, but then you put like this beautiful filter on it and now like it's streaming beautiful water, like that's how your nervous system kind of gets like cleaned out and reprogrammed. And it is that difference of the somatic work, right? Because you would automatically go, okay, I got to go to my therapist and I got to talk about this guy who's raped me 100 times, but intellectually that makes sense. But in your primal, like root chakra, like in that shit, it doesn't, because there's all this other stuff that is, you're just pushing subconsciously down and isn't in your conscious yet. So that's really the difference in this work. So I want to go into too about like orgasm specifically. You talked a little bit about like sex workers and orgasm, and how is orgasm like defined by you? How is it defined in your work, maybe versus your personal life? Like, what is orgasm to you? Since we're on the Orgasm Oracle podcast show. So
I feel like, okay, obviously there's no wrong answers, but like I feel like my answer isn't correct, or at least I have more of like the experience of kind of like that scientific orgasm where like your body like contracts like a bunch of times and that's like oh you feel it, right? In my work experience, I've never had an orgasm because I've never allowed myself to be like that vulnerable and that like I mean, I'm the one doing the dancing, right? Like I'm not getting the pleasure necessarily from it. So yeah, I've never had an orgasm at work. I mean, like in some, I'm trying to think, like maybe on stage when you have that moment and you're just like feeling so like everyone's cheering and throwing money.
I've seen it. I've seen you on stage. So.
So like in a way like that could be, but I don't know if it like checks all those boxes necessarily. But in my personal life, actually, I feel like I have such an interesting experience with orgasm because I didn't have my first orgasm till I was 19, but I started having sex when I was 14. So there's like 5 years of just like essentially pleasing men. That was kind of like, oh, this is because I was always so curious about sex. Like I learned about what sex was when I was 4 years old. My neighbor who was 5 years old, I just remember so vividly, like we were in her room and she sat me down. She's like, I just learned what sex was. She just described everything to me. And I was like, oh my God, that's fascinating. Like, wow. Like she was like sex, sex. And I was like, cool. Like, this is so interesting. So I was fascinated with it for so long. And then around 14, I started dating my first boyfriend. And I was like, I'm so ready. Like, I don't even know what this all is about, but like, let's just start exploring and all this kind of stuff. And I had like started watching porn. And okay, the one thing is I've always had like nails, like really long nails. So when I was, like 10 to 13 or whatever, I experimented with masturbating, but I had nails and it just felt super uncomfortable. So I never really like took that experience to like get to know myself. I was just so much like, oh, sex is with a man and a woman. Let me have that experience. Whatever. So yeah, it was like that boyfriend, never had an orgasm with him, never even like came close, never even understood what it really was. And the second boyfriend was this extremely traumatizing guy. So I think that like kind of shut me down it shut me down in an opposite way where I was like, once we broke up, I was like, I need to have sex with every single person I meet. Right. So I was like doing all these like one night stands and all this different stuff. And I obviously just never, I was either drunk or like they didn't, wasn't their priority or wasn't even my priority to understand, to like ask for someone like, hey, can you go down on me and do it in this way and blah, blah, blah. Like, I just didn't even know what I wanted. And then I got chlamydia, and which was obviously extremely terrible. And I was really kind of like ashamed of it too, because it was very painful and very just like, uncomfortable. And I was like 2 weeks like bedridden and stuff. And so as that kind of started to clear up, I was still very like, there's shame around it. Like, I don't want to go be with other people right now. Like, even though I was cleared, I just felt very like hesitant. So then I started to masturbate again. And this was like really the first time that I was like, okay, like I need to get off. Let's figure out how this is going to go.
The gifts of chlamydia.
Yeah, totally. And the funny thing was I didn't even have any sex toys at all, but I was so horny. I was like, I just need something. So I started using makeup brushes because they're like thick handles. So I'd use like the powder brush to like insert it. And then I'd use like a smaller one on like my clit or whatever. And I started watching porn. And then I was like, And then I also started to realize too that when I was watching porn, I was only focused on the woman. Like I did not care at all about the man. I was like, I don't dick, ew, gross, but I was like, woman, whoa, okay. And I'm like, masturbating with my things, and I had an orgasm. I was like, whoa, like it was amazing. And then I probably had like 50 in the next like 2 weeks because I was like,
yeah.
Oh, this is amazing. And then I was like, I think I'm a lesbian because I don't even like men anymore. Anyways, so there was just like this whole kind of personal like experience for me to do it. But then also, I think it was like another 2 years before I was 2 or 3 years before I was able to have an orgasm with a partner. And like let a partner be the one to give me the orgasm. Like I just wasn't able to kind of like let go and surrender. I feel like I needed this like whole setup, like my computer and my this and my that and like all these things. But I had one partner at the time, and he was very, very like I appreciate him so much. Like he was very much like, I want to make you orgasm. Like, how do I do that? What do I do? And I was like, I don't know. Like, let me figure it out. I was like, try this, try that. And like, it was kind of weird for me to describe because in deep down, I had been so shut down and I really just wasn't sure like what I really wanted and how to like really let go with another person. So it took a while. And I remember it was like Christmas Day, I think, on like in 2016 or something like that. And he finally did it. And we were just like, Merry Christmas.
How religious.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was great. But then it was like, I could only really do it in one way. It was like him going down on me for like 45 minutes and me thinking about the certain thing and like, blah, blah, like it was a very specific way. And I couldn't really kind of break out of that mold. And that kind of continued through that partnership and the next partnership. And then you and I started doing our coaching and stuff like that. And now I feel like I can orgasm in so many different ways now. Like I've orgasmed penetration, I've orgasmed like with and without clitoral stimulation, and by myself, with partners, with random partners, with like one night stand partners, like all this kind of stuff. And I also like know what to say to a guy too, like I know my little like quirks, and I'm like, oh, the left side is more sensitive than the right side, and you have to stop after like a few minutes and then start again, and like all these different things. And now I'm able to like, first of all, advocate for myself and be like, no, I deserve an orgasm too. Like obviously that orgasm gap in the world, right?
Fuck yes.
Yeah. And it's been really amazing since then. And now I feel like I'm just like, I'm like horny all the time, honestly. Like being at work, I feel like I'm so just like open with my sexuality, but I'm also really able to like just be aware of it. I'm like, oh, like I'm in the change room. Obviously I'm attracted to women. I'm in the change room with naked women like all the time, right? But I'm like, oh, I respect that you're a coworker of mine and you're a friend of mine. I'm not gonna like sexualize you in front of you. I'm not going to like try to hit on you at my job or whatever. I like
professional eros.
Yeah, like I really respect those boundaries. But then I get home and I'm like, woo, and I can like think about whatever I want. And, like, have all these crazy fantasies and stuff. And it's been such an incredible, like liberating journey, because I feel like, oh, this is now a tool I have to really help like calm my nervous system down. It helps like put me to sleep sometimes. Sometimes it helps me wake up and like get excited about things, and it helps me connect to my partners too. And my current partner and I, we figured out how to like orgasm together, which I've never been able to do before, but it's like so fascinating to be like kind of in that in sync moment. And then when we're like both orgasming together, it's like, whoa, like this is really fucking amazing. And I feel so like deeply connected to him and stuff. I'm dating a guy, even though I'm interested in women. Romantically interested in men, but sexually interested in women. So
hey,
kind of
there's all types of queer.
Yeah, totally. But I guess that's kind of my orgasm like journey.
Yeah, totally. And I think it really displays like when you dedicate the work to yourself and you fucking do it and go through it. Like you literally went from like vaginismus to like to check out her OnlyFans.
Totally.
Yeah, seriously. So it just really shows like your journey when you dedicate yourself to your sexual being, like when you really like go into that part of yourself. And you would think, like a sex worker go like that was kind of my journey too, is like I was so like sexually hungry and liberated seemingly, and like seeking in wild, but like it wasn't grounded. It was just like this like hunger and exploration constantly, as opposed to like this like grounded in like rootedness in like who I am and what I actually desire. It was so just like, and it was unfulfilling. Like I could never have enough. Like I was never fulfilled. And now like that I've dedicated and understand myself way better and deeper, now it feels like I am satisfied all the time, but I also genuinely want more. Or
Yeah.
honor my winters too.
Yeah, honestly,
Right?
I feel like now I can be more satisfied. I can be like, oh, that was
Mhm.
a great experience. Let's go on with our day kind of thing. And like back in the day, like when I was in Toronto and I was partying all the time and I was in this like
Yeah.
very like traumatized state, it was just like, how many people can I sleep with? It was just like,
Yeah.
and like how kind of crazy can I get? How many, like my friend and I would always just go downtown Toronto and meet. We kind of had an agreement, like we'll meet some guys and we'll meet back up in the morning and go back to the
Yeah.
suburbs, like it was very much like we're here to hook up with people because we need to like have that almost like a bit of a validation too that you could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. And now I'm just like, oh, I could take it or leave it. I mean, like I'm obviously with someone right now, so I feel very like satisfied with that. But at the same time, like if he's busy one night or he whatever, like I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Like I'll figure myself out. I'll, take care of myself. And then not even just like orgasming and masturbating, but also just like I'll go take a bath. I'll like sing my songs or like, do something creative. I'll go for a walk. Like I'm able to find that kind of pleasure in so many different ways. And,
Yes.
like, really like take in that pleasure, like just going for a walk now in my new neighborhood and like smelling the trees and smelling all the flowers. It's just like, oh, this is like, it's like a nature orgasm or something like that.
Yeah, ecosexual. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Wait, what is it called?
Yeah.
Ecosexual, right?
Ecosexual. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love nature.
like this is really the thing, like pleasure actually lands. Like we're so
Mhm.
in denial of our pleasure, and we've been taught that we're not allowed to have pleasure. And like when you reclaim pleasure, like it actually lands in you and you actually feel it. And like I have chronic illness and I'm like crying about it all the time, but I also in tandem with that, like feel so much pleasure and like so much gratitude and like gifts in my life in tandem with that. And even in like pain and all my shit, like I can find pleasure there or liberate with the pleasure. Just like that tantric concept is just so life-changing when you dedicate yourself to pleasure. And it's really funny because even recently I was like thinking about, okay, like I need to do a pleasure practice to like overcome whatever I was going through. And then I was like trying to go do it, and I was like, I had these thoughts in my head. I was like, oh, I'm not allowed to have pleasure right now. Like I'm supposed to be in pain, like I'm disabled or whatever. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. No, like I've re-patterned that story.
Yeah.
So really this like you have to re-cement it. It's just like looking in the mirror and hating your body, and every time you see your body you're like, oh, that's ugly, I see that's ugly, no, no, no. Or like you walk down the street and you're like, oh, that person's ugly or whatever. But then when you finally shift over into body love, it's like every time you look in the mirror you're like, oh wow, that's beautiful. Like it's just crazy. It's like you have different sunglasses on or
Yeah.
something, and it's just like you weren't in pleasure before, you didn't like let yourself have that, and now you do. And it's
Yeah.
incredible to change and then bring it into your work, and especially with sex work. I remember too, like I would put on like my sugar daddy ads, like I have like a insatiable appetite for sex. They'd be so excited for it. And then like I'd sex them out like every single time. Like I'd be like, hey, like more. And they'd be like, I think I've had enough.
Nice.
Like I remember one was like, yeah, like I think I should save some for my wife. And I was
Oh my God, I love that.
I was insatiable. I could never get enough. I was too hungry and it just never landed really. And it's just, it's like you can never drink enough. I mean, I was a total addict, right? I could never drink enough. I could never do enough drugs, like whatever, right? And now, like, there's this enoughness, like my cup can stay full. And this is like the big difference. And especially when you're working in a job that drains you. I mean, sex work is one, but like all our jobs drain us,
Yeah,
right? So
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been able to find so much pleasure in just like smaller things and even like pleasure in kind of like allowing emotions to come and go, like having a
Mm,
conversation with someone like just the other day and you know, I started tearing up as they were talking and I was just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm tearing up, but like I'm really feeling what you're saying and like it's extremely
mhm,
heartbreaking." And instead, I didn't really apologize for it. I just kind of was like, oh, I'm really feeling this. And I was just crying and I was
mhm,
like letting myself kind of be there in that moment and like letting it pass. And it was just like, wow, I felt really good for allowing that. I think a lot of times it would just be like, oh no, I can't cry. I have to like be strong. And it's like, no, but I feel like when you're able to really just be so much more open to all experiences, including pleasure, because when you know, block out bad experiences, it blocks out everything, right? But then when you're
yeah,
open to it all, it just like elevates that human experience so much and you can find this like satisfaction in so many different ways. Like it's just so incredible how it changes you. And like a lot of people too have noticed it at work because I'm so much more like loud and outgoing and like I can just bounce back from things really quickly and I also
mhm,
understand like pacing and taking breaks and it's like I don't have to push myself super hard to like get what I want. I can like take my time and go through it. And one specific example is like in my stage shows, I remember watching a video of one of my shows from like baby stripper days, right? And I'm
mhm,
just like bouncing around the stage, like running around the stage, basically, just like a chicken with its head cut off or something like that. And it looked very chaotic. I'm sure
yeah,
people like it was entertaining, whatever. But now I'm able to just like, because I thought, oh my God, I have to perform at my top, like,
yeah,
go, go, go.
less efficient. Like
Yeah,
there's no
totally.
efficiency in it.
Yeah, and now I like take it. I mean, there's mirrors all around the stage, so like I can watch myself all the time. But now I will just like sit in like a sexy pose and just kind of like look around at everybody and just like take in that energy and just feel like, yeah, like I have your attention and I'm not doing anything. I mean, I'm just sitting there for like a few seconds or something like that. And like it's just really awesome to like feel that satisfaction from like doing less almost too and just like really
Exactly.
taking in what is there. Yeah, it's been really awesome and like way better for my joints too.
Yeah, seriously. And then you start to create this culture around you, right? Like you start
Mm,
to communicate that way with everyone you're with. And then like it starts to bounce back and then like they get it. And then, yeah, like this one lover, like I was teaching him this whole kind of like when I just cry, just like let me cry, don't try to make me not cry, and
mm,
then like yeah, just how we hold emotion for each other now is so
mm,
beautiful. And it goes into like my family and like my whole life, right? So I can imagine too in sex work, like if you're in front of someone and need to express something and it's like, oh, sorry, sorry, sorry. And it's like, no, like I have space for this. Like,
mm,
let's hold it. And the gratitude people, I mean, like, this is what my job's all about, but like when you use it everywhere, like the gratitude that my friends have when,
mm,
wait a second, I'm allowed to just like have a feeling, or, you'll be like, actually, I don't have space for this right now.
mm.
Can we touch back or whatever, right?
Yeah,
That
totally.
culture just like nurtures you so much and
Mhm.
lets you be this more expanded human that you are.
Yeah, definitely. It's a enlivening, like it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, to kind of wrap this up, I want to do a quick little embodiment where we'll
Okay.
go into the oracle of your orgasm
Ooh,
and see if
okay.
it has anything to say. How does that sound?
Yeah, definitely.
And if you're listening, you can totally do this with us. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. Awesome. So let's just like take a seat, get comfy for a second. And I invite you, if you like, to put one hand on your heart and one hand over your womb space or between your pubic bone and belly button. Just take a couple deep breaths, feeling the expansion in your whole abdominal cavity and chest, those hands rising and falling. And I invite you to invite your orgasm to be present. The energy of your orgasm, it might have a color or texture. And then just noticing, where does it live? in your body. And with that energy, I invite you to ask it, do you have any advice for me? In this moment, do you have any advice for my future or anything you want to say about what you've taught me in the past? And I invite you, Mia, if you like, to say it out loud.
Wait, I just want to describe. I feel it kind of like in the middle of my my sternum, kind of to like my pelvis. Like I feel like a little electric kind of sensation, and it's very pink and like furry, like a soft furry blanket. And it's saying just like keep being loud, keep sharing what you have to say, keep speaking up for marginalized communities, keep singing, keep sharing your opinions, sharing your voice. Yeah, it's just like it feels like a little like power source, and it's like just keep going. Like keep loud and keep be louder even.
Fuck yes.
Ooh, that feels so cool.
So just taking a moment of gratitude for your orgasm and it being this oracle that you can always refer back to tell you what is pleasure and to keep you on the path of pleasure and to keep nurturing and growing in it. Just thanking it for showing up today and speaking its truth. And slowly coming back to this space. Oh, yes.
Voice.
What?
You have such a calming voice.
Oh, thank you.
Your meditation voice. It's so nice.
And one of my clients was like, you need to start a podcast. I was like, it's on my list of things to do. So it is here.
It's happening.
And just like speaking to your orgasm too. And the fact that it said get loud. One of my main advices is get fucking loud during sex.
Totally. Oh my God. Yeah. I love it.
The previous one, that's what it was partly about. I'm sure I'll have like a whole episode just on getting loud.
Honestly, yeah. I noticed just I've been filming a lot of OnlyFans content, like having sex and stuff like that, and I'll be extra loud during that filming, like more loud than I do, but oh my God, it's so much more fun. I just feel like, yeah, I want to scream.
Seriously. And it's gonna send so many vibrations out there, right?
Yes,
to attract.
totally. People are loving it. So
So to wrap up, is there anything else you need to say, or I'm gonna talk about your socials in a second, but is there anything else you want to plug or say? Or
there's one thing that I feel like is just a really good resource. It's this book called We Too. I'll just hold it up. Oh, can't really see it.
It's blurry.
Okay, whatever.
Instead of Me Too, W.
Yeah, We Too, essays on sex work and survival. And I just feel like anybody who wants to see a broad perspective of sex work, the issues that we face, the stigmas, the laws. This is based in the US, so we don't necessarily have them here in Canada, but it has just been such an eye-opening book to be sex workers are saving the world, but we are also being in a battle with the world as well. So it is so important to, if anything you get from this, just start to unravel that stigma around sex work, because it is extremely damaging. It is literally killing sex workers at the lowest levels, and we just don't need that in our community. We are so we put so much out there for the world, and we don't get a lot of it back, and that's mainly because of stigma and also resources and things like that. But a huge part of it is because of stigma, and people think that we're all just dirty, junky kind of people, but it's no, we're mothers, we're business owners, homeowners, we're world travelers, we're artists, we're musicians, we're sex workers, we're everything, right? So yeah, that's
Your
all.
daughters, your sisters.
Yeah. I feel like I'm like, oh, I have so many things to say, so many words, but I just forgot all of them.
Yeah.
Not a mother,
Yeah, literally everything. Yeah. And yeah, even you said like on the lower end of sex work, but even like all sex
all of
work
it
is vulnerable to death. And yeah, I know there was just a death in this community. So I just really am sending so much love, and I don't want to go into the death, but in my opinion, it sounds like it was directly correlated to having difficult work, right? So
absolutely. So I feel like by releasing the stigma, there's more resources available for us. Like we don't even have like healthcare or HR or anything like that. So
yeah,
really not a lot of resources, and it's literally because of the stigma. So if there was less stigma, there'd be more resources, there'd be less, issues, and people would be able to thrive in this industry way, way more than currently. I mean, people are thriving, but yeah, it's like it's privilege. Honestly, it really comes down to privilege and what you have access to right now. So
and
yeah.
anyone who thinks sex work is easy money,
God.
fucking try it.
No, one thing I learned really early on, someone was like, it's not easy money, it's fast money, but it's extremely hard, just like any other job or any other hard job. Essentially, it's not just like a walk in the park, that's for sure.
But fast money, but it's hard money.
Yeah, definitely. But for me personally, I find it is extremely rewarding, and I'm very privileged to be able to say that it does empower me, and I do find it extremely rewarding, financially, mentally, physically, spiritually, in all the different ways. So yeah, and honestly, I just wish that for every sex worker. I wish every sex worker was able to, open up the doors that I've opened up for myself and like live the life that they want to live. Like that's really my dream, is for all of sex workers to have more accessibility to whatever they want to have.
Fuck yes. Oh, I just love that. I just love you so much.
Love you, girl.
Thank you so much for being here. And if you want to check out MiaMiranda on Instagram, I am MiaMiranda. On OnlyFans, I am MiaMiranda. And at Twitter, come into me, INTUMI. Did I say that all right?
Yeah, you got it. That's good.
Awesome. Check out our OnlyFans, subscribe, and so much love for being here and talking about sex work and how important it is and how you're fucking saving the world.
Yay. Well, thank you for having me and giving sex workers a platform and a voice. Really appreciate it.
Mwah, so much love.
Bye.
If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like and rate. It really helps get this life-changing information into as many ears as possible. And please slide into my DMs or reach out through my website anytime. Thanks for listening. Much love and gratitude. Signing off, Nadia. Mwah.